Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
That's bad. 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 That's bad. 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 Bad.
BADAPTATIONS.
Badap. I don't know.
All right, so I want to get ahead of this right now, Tom.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, there are other podcasts named BADAPTATIONs.
Sure.
I don't want to steal their thunder. This isn't a podcast called BADAPTATIONS. This is a mini-series called BADAPTATIONs. Does that make it better? I mean,
let me be the first.
fine.
Let me be the first to say, and let me get out in front of this. I don't give a shit.
Okay,
I don't
that's
care.
fine too.
I don't care. How many movies have the same? How many movies have the same title? Like, who cares?
That's true.
Who cares?
That's true. Welcome to BADAPTATIONs. I'm one of your hosts, David Bell.
I'm a second in number of your hosts, Tom Ryman.
And we're just diving into this. We have we don't we didn't have like a script or a plan for how we're introducing this.
No, we're just kind of like bursting through this like a pair of purple slacks.
Yeah.
We're just gonna kind of feel our way through it.
But
a newborn giraffe or Hulk stumbling around, getting used to his legs, like a newborn Hulk. Yeah.
All right, we do have some sections, but we should probably explain. Well, okay, hold on. I'm going to start by thanking our producer, Grumblebee. Hey, Grumblebee, thank you so much for your support.
Yeah.
This is brought to you by Grumblebee, everybody.
Yeah.
This is a podcast where we look at, it's probably pretty clear in the title, adaptations of novels or comic books or, probably TV
anything.
shows, video games.
Any property.
Yeah. Anything that's an adaptation. Specifically an adaptation that I'm going to go ahead and say was considered bad, or is largely considered bad.
Yeah, was yes. That's a good way to put it, because we're not always going to necessarily fall on the side of the adaptation being bad.
I agree. And so I'm not sure how we'll pick the future ones right now. This was requested by Grumblebee, and I do think it's a very good place to start.
Yeah, this is going to be more interesting than you might expect.
Yeah,
I'm going to put that as as the slogan for our network. More interesting than you might expect.
This is 2003's Ang Lee's The Hulk. Hulk.
Just Hulk.
Ang Lee's Hulk.
The trash-ass Amazon Prime app was trying to tell me this movie was called The Hulk, and I'm like, no, it's not.
No, yeah. Fuck you, Amazon.
No, it is
Prime.
not.
Yeah. Fuck you, Amazon, for this. Mostly this.
It's Hulk. It's a mononym, like share.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to right away say, the way they coined the phrase Hulk in this movie, way better than the way they do it in the Marvel series.
I don't even remember.
It was like it's a college kid who's being interviewed, and he goes, "It was like some sort of Hulk, man." And it's like, yeah, you know how college kids just use that word, and then the news just goes, "There you have it, it's a Hulk," and it's like, everybody slow down here.
Yeah, hold on, pull over.
Yeah, ask it its name. Don't just have some college kid name it. Yeah. So what we're going to talk about?
I do really want someone to ask Hulk his name.
Yeah,
because Hulk does call himself Hulk, but where did he learn that?
Yeah, exactly.
Which came first, the chicken or the Hulk?
Yeah, in this he just sort of says it. He's like, "Oh, that's that fucking Hulk," or something like that, and then it's like, all right, and then they don't actually call it the Hulk throughout. He just refers to himself as a Hulk, and they call it Angry Man, which it is.
Yeah, I want. Now I want all the comics to just be the Incredible Angry Man.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Take cover! He's so angry!
So it's funny you should mention the comics, because what we're going to start with here is defining what actually makes a good adaptation of The Incredible Hulk. Now, right away, I want to start by saying that depending on the movie we're covering, we might be completely in the dark here.
That's true. We'll do our due diligence as much as we can, for sure. But, like, for instance, if we decide to cover, I don't know, David Lynch's Dune, I'm not going to read Dune before watching the movie. That's a lot of work, and I don't have the time.
Yeah. I'm notoriously, I guess not notorious because that means people are talking about it. I am very bad at having read source material. Like, I think I've told this story when I heard Peter Jackson was adapting Lord of the Rings. I had no idea what Lord of the Rings was. I was just excited Peeder Jackson was making a movie.
I still think you're lying about that.
No, I was so psyched.
You have to be fucking with me on that.
I had never heard of it.
How could you never hear of Lord of the Rings?
I was in my 20s.
You went to an art school.
I know. I went up to my friend who, let's just say he did Warhammer figurines, so, you know, that kind of person. And I said, oh my God.
I like how you began that by saying, let's just say, because normally that indicates you're going to use some sort of minimized euphemism, but you said, let's just say he painted Warhammer figures.
Well, he's that kind
which
of
is
nerd.
Not minimizing anything.
he played the D's in the D's, you know? And I was like, Peter Jackson's making a new movie. Did you hear? And he's like, no. And I'm like, it's so cool. What is it? And I was like, something about rings. And then he looked it up and he was so angry with me. But yeah, it's so, like, I guess my point here is that I think a lot of the stuff we cover, I'm going to be like, I don't know what to expect. You know, like with the Hulk, it's like I've probably read a Hulk comic or two, but I am hardly a Hulk fan in the terms of the comics, right? But can I tell you, Tom, what I expect from a Hulk film?
Yeah, sure. Just the general, whatever it is you've gleaned via osmosis, pop culture osmosis, like what your idea of what a Hulk movie should be, just based on what you know of the character. Sure, yeah. I think that's fair.
And I will say, Hulk was, like, when they were making Iron Man, I had no idea what Iron Man was. I didn't know anything about that either. This I did going into it when it first... And so even having not really read much comics, I expected a mad science story. A Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, okay.
That was my understanding of the Hulk. It was vials of green stuff and, like, cheesy science, and I've turned into a monster.
Those are
and,
certainly all elements of it. I expect a lot of people were more familiar with the TV series with Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno, so that's probably what most general audiences were had in their mind. But it's interesting that you picked Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, because I mean that's clearly what he is, right?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Stanley must have modeled him off of that. Or I guess, according to Mallrats, his own internal rage.
You know. For sure.
But, that just seemed like the obvious comparison, is that he's a conflicted man. He doesn't want to turn into the Hulk, but he keeps turning into the Hulk, and he is a hunted man. I knew that from the TV show. Yeah. You know? And so that's what I expected in this. What did you expect going into 2003's Hulk?
First, I'll I want to go back to what I said about how I'm, like, absolutely not going to read, like, Dune if we end up covering Dune. I still might, but I'll do my best to immerse myself in the source material as much as reasonably possible before we cover a thing.
It's also what you said is that we kind of know through the culture. Yeah. Like what a thing is supposed to be going into it.
Yeah. Well, Dune is an interesting thing because everything I know about Dune is based on that David Lynch movie because I grew up watching that movie. But anyway, that's for another episode. Hulk for me is a little bit easier because I grew up with Marvel Comics, just like hip deep in that. All the
Right.
characters, all the main characters anyway, like all the main Avengers and Spider-Man and everything. So I was pretty familiar with old Hulkamania. So I came into it expecting something like Spider-Man, but with the Hulk, where it would be like I knew the basic story, you know, of when he gets mad, he turns into a monster, he breaks shit, he's hunted by the military, he has a lot of weird, very, very powerful villains, and also the leader in his rogues gallery. So I was
What's
expecting
the leader?
The leader is Tim Blake Nelson in the Edward Norton one. He's the guy. He's the green guy with the really big brain.
Got it.
So he's like his mental villain. It's, you know, he is strong in mind in all of the ways that Hulk is strong in body. The yin to his yang, as it were. So I was expecting, you know, Hulk smash. Big green guy breaking a bunch of shit. Spider-Man had just come out, so I was riding real high on Marvel Comics at the time. So I was expecting a Spider-Man, but with Hulk. Where it would be the sort of Spider-Man template where it's he gains his powers, he wrestles with them, learns how to use them, and ends up defeating a villain in the end, which is basically what happens in this movie.
Yes. I do want to give some context for 2003 and Spider-Man, and honestly also The Matrix, is that the reason I think these are all significant films, in my mind, or why they were, I don't know if I could identify it at the time, but I know what it was that excited me, is that up until this point, we saw CGI as largely a way to make monsters.
Yes.
And suddenly we were making humans. Were we making them great? Depended. You know, ask Blade 2. You know, like certain things didn't quite pull it off. But it was starting to be like when I first saw Spider-Man, I remember in the trailer him flipping backwards onto the car, which I knew was the car from Evil Dead as well.
Yeah.
And that just, and seeing like a human do something like that, it was like, holy shit. Like I had never seen that before.
Yeah.
Same with The Matrix. And I remember in the trailer of this, Hulk swinging a tank around and throwing it and going, holy fuck, that is new.
Yeah,
that is brand new.
I do remember going through that sequence of emotions myself after, you know, like watching The Matrix to a lesser extent, but when Spider-Man came out, it was like, and then seeing how, you know, CGI and other modern digital effects were used to make a superhero. Like that was when it clicked for me, where it was like, oh shit, we can make superhero movies now. Like every comic book I've ever read, we can make that into a movie. So I was riding pretty high on that at the time.
Yeah. So, okay, that I feel like this is all reasonable expectations for a Hulk.
Yeah. Another thing to keep in mind, if depending on how old you are, listener, I don't know you. This is a long time before the MCU.
Yeah.
So that's a very important context for this film, and I think for the conversation we're going to have in this episode about it. But we were still like, I don't know, there were like 5 superhero movies that had come out in the last 15 years. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. And we were riding high on. It was at least had one Spider-Man.
We had
right?
one Spider-Man. It had been a while since a Batman. We'd had a Daredevil at this point.
No, really?
Yeah, Daredevil.
Ben Affleck.
Yeah, Daredevil was February 2003.
Wow.
So it was actually a couple of months before this movie.
Wow.
And then Blade, of course, but like it was still slim pickings. Like it wasn't the saturation of superhero films was nowhere near what it is right now.
Right. And so I should also note going into this, I still wasn't that like, yes, what I'm saying about the CGI, it was amazing. I really liked the Spider-Mans because it's Sam Raimi. Generally speaking, I wasn't that impressed by the genre of superheroes at this time. And so I will say, as we get into the next section, I don't believe I liked this movie when I first saw it. Mm-hmm. I don't, or rather, I don't think I was that impressed by it. which I think a lot of people are saying no shit.
Yeah, no, this movie was not super well received. It got criticized a lot for being very boring, very talky.
Yes.
Very slow.
Now,
it's almost 2.5 hours long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah. And that's when we get into our first section, which is the bad. We'll talk about the bad first. And that does imply the existence of a section called the good. And I actually want to start with, as I get older, I like this movie more and more. And at this point, I struggle to find things that I really hate with it.
Okay, I can identify a few things, but yeah, no,
there are problems for sure.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is a lot of the things that I identified as problems at the time are now just things that are in superhero movies. Mm-hmm. I also want to point out, is this the best standalone Hulk movie?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. That's very funny.
I mean, it's one of those things where we don't all. I mean, I don't know what fucking bit of wisdom I was about to try to drop on you guys. But like,
mankind has always.
Webster's defines Hulk as. No, but you tend to say, like, when a movie comes out and it's kind of a bold piece of art, which in many ways Ang Lee's Hulk is.
It is. Especially for the time it came out.
Especially for the time it came out.
Comic book movies
were few and far between. Yeah. So there was a lot more pressure on a comic book movie like this. Like, the Hulk was supposed to be a franchise launcher. It was at, everybody wasn't under the same studio. We'd had a Spider-Man movie, but that was at Sony. Hulk was Universal. So Hulk,
right.
This was supposed to start Universal's own franchise of Hulk movies. So there's a lot of pressure on this movie to deliver the kinds of blockbuster moments that you sort of expect from an MCU movie right now.
Right. Dare I also say it deserved 3 movies. If Sam Raimi, like, I'm just going to say that right now, there should have been 3 movies. We at least got a cool roller coaster out of it. But sorry.
That's true. What I was going to say is when something comes out, be it a movie or a book or a TV show or whatever, an album, and it just tanks and it's not well received at the time, except by it's not well received by the general public. We tend to say, well, time will be the ultimate judge of it. And I think Hulk actually, this movie is better in 2022 than it was in 2003, I think.
I agree, and I do think a lot of stuff from this era isn't the case. Yeah. We've been seeing a lot of nostalgia for this era because people who now have a voice grew up in this era.
We're kids at this point, yeah. I was not. I was in college when this movie came out.
Same here. I was working at a movie theater. So, for example, seeing a lot of people being like, actually, the prequels are good. It's like, no, they're not.
No, they're not. You were just 6 when they came out.
Yeah, there are things about them that I enjoy in retrospect.
I don't think now... let me real quick say that I do not think the prequels are as bad as people say.
No, I think... Well, what it is that when you get farther away from a movie, at least me, I get less mad at it because I didn't just pay like $16 to watch it. You know what I mean? Where it's like when a movie is like mediocre and immediately so, you walk out of it and you're like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck that. And then years later, you're like, when it's free on Amazon Prime or something, or on Showtime,
or you
just
have more context for, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But then there are also, this isn't that to me. This is a movie that, as superheroes got defined, as Marvel became a thing, it's just like, how is this much different than those? For example, one of the things I don't like about this movie is that it has to end in a big dumb fight, and that's every Marvel film. Mm-hmm. It ends. I think what makes Hulk to me interesting is the stuff with the military and like the King Kong stuff.
Yeah,
where it's like we're talking him down, and then at the very end they do this thing where they're like, and we're gonna put them in the room with the villain. We always need a super villain, and we're gonna have them duke it out. Mind you, I do think the fight is really neat because it's so fucking weird.
Visually, it's very neat. Yes.
Yeah, but it's that same problem. It's like, why would they put them in this room together and have Nick Nolte like scream at him and like let this happen
and bite an electric cable.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
as soon as he rips it up, Sam Elliott's like, turn on the juice.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so we're just murdering him. Cool.
Right. We're just, that's the sort of stuff where it feels like, oh, well, we have to have this, you know?
Yeah.
The dogs, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. Finish your thought, and then I'll.
No, that's it. It's the fact that like the Hulk, they present such an emotional side to this.
Yes. And that's what's really good about it. But we'll talk about that in the next section.
And so then it still has to have the expectations of like, well, good guy has to fight bad guy. And it doesn't. There's a lot of really, man, I have more good things to say than bad things.
Sure.
But there's a sort of like, there's a really good elegance and efficiency to how they use Nick Nolte's character.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think he kind of feels redundant in like he's nonsense in his decisions a lot of the time. And he's just sort of like a raving maniac, and he just has to be evil. And then at the end, it just has to be the fight, you know? And there's stuff about him, and like, it's that thing where like, it's sort of the point is that a lot of this movie could be resolved by two old guys talking to each other, just like talking.
Yeah, but that's the point of the movie.
But that's the point of the movie,
Yeah.
exactly. But I would say Nick Nolte is used less elegantly than Sam Elliott.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Elliott is a good character. Nick Nolte is a bad character. And I'm not talking about in terms of their morality. I'm talking about how they are written and how they are utilized in the story.
Yeah,
Nick Nolte is nonsense in this movie.
Yeah, he is. And in the like when he's yelling at Bruce at the end before he bites the cable, I'm like, I have no fucking idea
what
you're
are you
talking
talking? Like his motivations are indecipherable. He goes on these long-winded speeches that are one, barely audible, and two, don't make sense even when you can hear them. He's a very poorly written character, and I understand the impulse to include him because the basic story that this movie is telling is a story about parents and their kids, right? What fathers pass on to their children and how your kids end up fighting your battles and how your kids end up suffering for your battles because you're unable to stop being selfish and stop fighting them. Like you have to keep fighting the same battle just because it's your battle, and then you end up ruining your kids because of it. Like that's like the main theme of the movie. So I understand why they wanted to include Nick Nolte as Bruce Banner's dad to counterbalance Sam Elliott as Jennifer Connelly's dad. But like Sam Elliott's motivations are very clear. His purpose in the story is very clear. Nick Nolte is just this weird, he feels like an afterthought, but he clearly isn't because so much of the story hinges on him making completely baffling decisions to move it along, which is ultimately one of the movie's definitely biggest weaknesses, I think.
Yeah, because it feels like the actions of like the reveal that he tried to kill Bruce as a kid and then accidentally killed his wife. I can work with that. But there's this weird level of he's just like, you're better than them all. All those army, we can rule the world. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, calm down.
Well, it's his. So Bruce, the reason Bruce turns into the Hulk is because he inherited this altered DNA from Nick Nolte, because Nick Nolte had been experimenting on himself.
Right.
And that's why when he gets blasted by gamma rays, he doesn't die. He turns into this monster. So it's like it's a literal representation of the rage of injustice, perceived injustice that Nick Nolte passed on to him. He's like, the military wouldn't let me continue my work. It's because your work was crazy and you're a crazy person.
Yeah, you're doing mad science.
Yeah, you're a mad scientist. Yeah. So for sure that element of it, and I think honestly, I'm saying the bad, but I have to say a little bit of the good in order to give the bad context. What I think works about this movie, to sort of push back a little bit against what you said a minute ago, is that I think it actually is pretty unique. in the sea of MCU movies, because the main story it's telling is like this very personal story between 4 people, and really between 3 people, because Nick Nolte is whatever.
No, I do agree with you. This is the problem, is that we have a section where it's like, what did the movie get wrong? And I'm like, there are stuff, but honestly, I would do a best bad movie on this. I would get completely 100% behind this movie and say nothing's wrong. I can argue for why everything can exist in this movie.
So what I would,
but I'm recognizing the things, or I'm trying to recognize the things that people might have had issue with. I don't know.
Yeah. So what I think is bad is, you know, the need to include stuff for him to fight outside of the military for some reason, even though I think the military worked perfectly fine as a villain. Like you mentioned,
him versus tanks.
You mentioned King Kong. It is a tragedy. But so including the big villains they decide to include for him are a bunch of goofy looking cartoon dogs that look like when Jim Carrey's dog put the mask on.
Yeah. Not a great sequence.
And then like Nick Nolte with the power of the elements. Is that
from a comic book?
He's kinda sort of absorbing man, but like not really. It's like it was baffling at the time too. And that's
I don't know what. So I don't know why the gamma radiation did that.
Yeah, so like I think one of this movie's biggest mistakes in terms of adapting a Hulk comic, as I had mentioned earlier, he has this gallery of bizarre villains, and Nick Nolte becoming the Elements certainly falls into that category, but it's so vaguely defined that it just it like the climax of this movie is very confusing.
That's the thing. It's them in a lake, and he's like, "You want all the power?"
And then he becomes a cloud of like the greatest hits reel of all his childhood memories. Like it's literally a big green cloud of previous scenes of the movie playing in it, and then it gets hit with a missile
like
and pops.
Bubble, yeah. And I thought it was like kind of like the bubble blood that Nick Nolte had. It's here's the thing. It's visually.
Visually is very cool. Okay. Narratively, it's stupid and confusing and like a terrible way to end your movie.
Right.
And like Hulk is Hulk smash. So if you're gonna have him fight, if you're gonna have it end in a big supervillain fight, it's like important that we understand what's going on. And it's so, it's just. It's
abstract.
It's so abstract.
It's in the mind.
Yeah.
It's happening like in the mind where he's absorbing his powers. I don't understand why Nick Nolte dies. I assume he's like, I'm going to flood you with my powers.
Right,
and that
because
overwhelms you.
All we are told, or not even told, we're just shown that he can like absorb whatever he touches. So when they're like, let's shoot a missile at him, I'm like, don't do that. He's just going to drink that.
Yeah,
but it kills him for some reason.
Because it's a gamma missile.
I guess again, it's just it's a very very confusing finale. I don't know.
Here's the thing: is that it is, and all right. This is the more logical thing to happen. It's also the thing I didn't like in the new one, which is like the more natural thing to happen is you have someone else take Bruce's blood and become a Hulk as well, an unstable Hulk, an abomination,
if you will.
The problem is that was fucking boring.
It was also
in the New
boring.
Incredible Hulk. And it was also like they did the thing where they're like, well, we need a villain. And it's like, you have a villain. It's the military. Yeah. Why are you adding another villain? And then they did that. And then everybody has to be like, go get him, Hulk. And then they just ruin Harlem. And then that's never addressed again.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's just like, well, okay. Like... that was so like this fight is at least visually different. You know what I mean? It's not just two monsters punching each other.
Yeah, well,
it's like Ang Lee saw CGI and really was like, you can do anything with this, and really had an imagination where it feels like other directors go, you could do anything with this, and then just do a bullet time shot of two monsters punching each other. And it's like, come on, you can literally do anything.
Yeah.
Can you think of anything cooler to do?
And that's, I think, the biggest misstep in the terms of adapting Hulk is Ang Lee clearly understands the visual medium. And that's clearly what appeals to him. certainly about this character, because it's told in this very unique way where it's kind of like comic panels, and that's really cool, and I appreciate that more every time I watch this movie, which is not often. I don't rewatch this movie very often at all.
Same.
And like the climax is visually really cool, but it's narrative gibberish, and like that's, you have to find that balance, because comics are a visual medium, yes, but they're also telling relatively straightforward stories. So it's like we need to find a balance there, and this was tipped way too much just toward, oh, it's very pretty. It's like, yeah, it's very pretty, but like I don't know what the fuck is happening.
Right.
And like
Absolutely.
I shouldn't be scratching my head at the Hulk. Like Hulk should be smashing.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an abstract concept at the end.
Yeah. Hulk should be fucking kicking a field goal with someone's head. Like throwing a tank into the sun.
This is the part where, and he does do that.
He does do that, yeah.
But for the climax, it's like, I didn't need the climax at all.
Right.
They could have ended it. He could have fucked off, and then in San Francisco.
Like it seemed like what would have been a more powerful thing was if the climax would have been a showdown between him and Sam Elliott, and then when it gets down to it, he, instead of killing Sam Elliott because the part of his Bruce mind is able to intervene into the Hulk for long enough to be like, you can't kill Betty's dad, you love her. And then he just fucks off. Like that would have been that's the climax.
Like, you have a thing where they're like, Nick Nolte escaped. You know, like you do something like that. You set up a sequel.
I'm just talking. I'm talking about in terms of like if you want to. For sure you do that. But like if you want to have like
because
the
question is, what do you do with Nick Nolte?
Right.
It's like you do leave him as a loose end. Frankly,
yeah.
Like it's okay. You want more of these,
right?
We're all planning on more.
Yeah.
In this case, it's okay to keep that open-ended because you have completed a story arc otherwise.
Yeah, because the arc is between those three characters, Bruce and Betty and General Ross, and like the completion of Bruce's arc is not completely controlling the Hulk and, you know, by extension his internal conflict, but like beginning to, or like understanding and addressing it and starting to take control of it. Like that's the arc. So right. you can do that and you could still make it visually elegant or whatever. But I think the other big thing that this movie misses out on is what is exhilarating about the Hulk. Like what's cool about the visuals of the Hulk is that sequence when he's just bounding across the desert and running through the dunes, jumping through the sky, fighting the tanks, like throwing them off into the distance. Like we need that. Like you need that for a Hulk movie. It's the Hulk. Like and that's what's cool. What's appealing. Like I said, exhilarating already, but that's the word. Like that's what's exhilarating about the Hulk is watching him do this shit that is incredible. You know, like pun intended.
And I would say, are you going to say we need more of it in this?
I don't necessarily think.
I think you could replace the dogs.
Yes,
with another good sequence.
With another sequence of him bounding with it, because the dogs suck.
Well, all right, the dogs suck, but I do appreciate watching the Hulk punch a dog in the dick.
Of course,
which he does.
Yeah,
and I was like, I appreciate that movie. Good job.
Yeah.
Also, flexing to break a dog's jaw.
Yeah.
I will say though, a general note for this film: audiences don't tend to like it when you constantly kill animals.
Yeah.
And like they murder so many animals in this movie, and like that is what science is.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Like in fairness, there are scientists, they are just murdering animals. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, that is realistic, but then on top of that, you kill 3 dogs and it's like, replace them with, I don't know, army guys or something.
Yeah.
Have them punch an army guy in the dick.
Something. Like I do like that because you get some cool characterization of Hulk through that, like sort of some of a little bit of his dirtbag energy. Well,
and the idea in that scene, and I have to defend it, is Jennifer Connelly is horrified.
Yeah.
That's the point of the scene, and that's why they chose dogs, because she's watching him kill 3 dogs.
Yeah.
And then she has to make the decision to turn him in.
Yeah.
And so it's weird, but the dog stuff does narratively make sense. But you could have done that a different way. The dogs are dumb looking. They're just dumb looking.
Yeah, they look
that's a
really
problem.
bad, and it sucks that like for his only really quote unquote supervillain fight in the film, if you're gonna have one at all, is between 3 cartoon dogs. It's like, okay,
yeah,
couldn't
not great.
Couldn't that have been like, I don't know, any number? Couldn't that have been Rhino or something? Couldn't that have been Abomination? Like,
right. I don't know.
It's again, we're talking about the movie in terms of being an adaptation of the Hulk. So there's not like a complete 1-to-1 between what I think makes a good movie and what I think makes a good adaptation of the Hulk.
Yeah, I do. I actually want to point this out. Is I know why I didn't like it at the time. Because I was younger, and I didn't care about the character. I just this all started from talking about seeing that in the trailer, him throw that tank, right?
Yeah.
And saying like that is fucking wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at an age where like I liked an indie film or two. You know, I liked watching weird shit. But with something like this, I wasn't there for a story. I just wasn't. I was there to watch a giant green CGI man do like cool shit. And this movie doesn't have a lot of that. It's a lot of melodrama, a lot of people talking. I would say everybody does a great job. They got some really good actors for this. It's just like ultimately I would have been more happy at the time with 2 solid hours of the Hulk on a rampage, you know? Yeah. He becomes the Hulk at about the 40-minute mark. And I would honestly say that, and we'll talk about it in the next section, there are good things with the pacing. As a story, I do think this is a really compelling and well-done movie.
Yeah.
As a Hulk adaptation, it probably needs more of a big green man beating people up.
We need to get to the Hulk way faster than 40 minutes.
Yeah.
In terms of a Hulk adaptation, 100%.
Yeah. It is 2 different ideas. It's as a Hulk adaptation, honestly, maybe not focus so much on the characters, frankly. Maybe not have to do that. As a movie, I do really, really appreciate the stuff they do in this.
And yeah, we'll get into that in the next section, because I think 15 years of the MCU has really helped me appreciate that a lot more. And also because I'm older. But yeah.
Yeah. Should we get into the next section?
I think so. I think we've identified kind of this film's missteps in terms of being a cool, definitive Hulk adaptation.
Yeah.
The first big screen theatrical adaptation of the Hulk probably shouldn't have been so abstract.
Yes, probably not.
It should have had way more of the big green guy punching people to the fucking moon.
Yeah, it should have been not like trying to be an art house film.
Yep.
To some extent. I do want to say this in between because this doesn't belong anywhere. Having watched this movie, I was thinking about it. Is Ethan Hawke turning into Nick Nolte?
Yes.
Okay. Is he like predestinationing himself or something? Like, was he always Nick Nolte?
I don't know.
You know?
I don't know, but he's definitely getting Nick Nolte roles now.
Yeah, and he was in Moon Knight, right? He's in that Moon Knight.
He is in Moon Knight, yeah.
Yeah, and he just flat out looks like Nick Nolte in that. Like he's starting to noticing this.
Watch the Good Lord Bird where he plays John Brown. He quite literally looks like Nick Nolte in that. It's just the beard and the long crazy hair. Yeah. He's
just our Nick Nolte now, and that's great.
Hot take: Ethan Hawke has never given a bad performance.
He's always great. Yes. He might be in a bad movie, he's never given a bad performance.
You're always getting 100% of the Hawk.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to go into what is good about this movie and adaptation. So I would just start with what we've already kind of touched on. When the Hulk is smashing, it is satisfying.
It's so good, and the MCU hasn't really gotten close to it, I don't think, in my opinion.
I hard agree. This is the best Hulk. This is the best version of the Hulk. Yes, the CGI is a little rough because it's a little older.
It's still pretty good, though.
It's still pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
I think it's the best version of the Hulk. His big, stupid green look, like that bright green color. They don't gritty him up. They're not afraid. I love how the bullets bounce off him like rubber, which the new ones sort of do, but not. It's the sound they do in this one is just like, I love it. His big, stupid jumping.
Yeah.
How the steam comes off of him. Like the tank stuff. It's just so... I don't know. I love it.
It's not just the look. It's in the what he actually does, like biting the warhead off of a missile and spitting it at a helicopter.
Spitting it. That's so fucking cool.
Just sprinting across the desert, and like you mentioned the bounding, but like his bounding in this movie, they really make you feel like how wild it is. It's like I imagine it must have been like what it was like for people to go see Richard Donner's Superman and watch Superman fly for the first time with like contemporary effects. Like they really and just when he's dealing with the 4 tanks and has to dismantle them in different ways, and he starts off by just flinging one into the distance. Like they really
so good.
Yeah, they really understand how to, like, I don't know, just get into what the Hulk can do and show us like what he can do. And like the Marvel movies don't really. Like there's some moments, like obviously him smashing Loki into the ground is incredible.
Right, him punching the big Leviathan
right in the face.
Yeah, that shit's cool. But if you notice, we're talking about him handling aliens and shit. That's one of the so the Edward Norton Hulk. I watched that fairly recently. It just fails. And one of the things it fails at is him versus the military, and that's really the only movie where we get to see that. You know,
yeah.
Because after that, he's an Avenger and he's good-ish, and he's doing the right stuff. There's a little in the first Avenger, I guess.
Well, in the second one, they hate. That's when he.
Right.
They have to use
Johannesburg,
That's when he has to use Hulkbuster to bring him down.
But yeah, even that stuff, it's like they're so scared. One of my favorite things about this movie was that a running theme, and in fact the motivations of characters, is civilian casualties.
Yes.
And they're really thinking about it. And I feel like Marvel films don't at all. They just always have like someone over a radio or someone at the end go, thank God no one was hurt. You know,
and
like
that's
shit like that.
That's the point of the Hulk. Like you mentioned King Kong earlier. He's not necessarily out to cause havoc, but he can't help but do that. So that's the whole point of the Hulk, is that he's just a walking bomb.
Right. And you just feel it a lot more in this version, despite the fact that it's like a plot point in the Avengers stuff where Hulk fucks off to space, you know? It just, you feel it a lot more because it's everybody's concern all the damn time. And like I having watched that Edward Norton one, they do the weird thing where it's like they're trying to hide the Hulk for some of the movie. And then when he faces off at the military, it's really boring. They do that like Sonic thing. Like he's just kind of like throwing stuff into things, and he never does anything that's like on this level of like swinging a tank by its barrel and throwing it like he's fucking Mario beating up Bowser, you know?
Yeah.
Like, fuck.
They get one moment.
So good.
Yeah, they get one moment in Incredible Hulk where he rips a car in half and makes gloves out of it.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
That's cool,
yeah.
But like it's not like this. Like they don't have as much fun with the sandbox of the Hulk. I'm just going to invent that phrase.
They really don't. And I think from beginning to end in the Marvel series, I can't really think of amazing moments with the Hulk using his environment to do really fun stuff. Or like there's fun moments, you know. There's all of Thor 3, you know.
Yeah.
There's definitely great moments, but from beginning to end, it always felt like the Hulk was generally underutilized. Mm-hmm. And part of it is like he's so powerful, they have to nerf him. He has to refuse to come out for the finale and all that. And so it's just like, I don't know. There was never anything on this level in the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
There's better stuff with character, obviously. There's a lot to say about Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo gives a better performance, I think, than Eric Bana, but I still feel like this movie gets at the pathology of the Hulk the best.
Way better
than any of the other, as good an actor as Mark Ruffalo is. Like, he's just not, the material's not there. So, like,
well, because the material, he's not. They use a shorthand where it's like, oh yeah, he's the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but they don't really go into they don't internalize any of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was gonna basically say that where the entire plot of this movie is about Bruce's internal conflict.
Right. And about the trauma in his childhood, which is a huge, really interesting part of all of this.
Yeah.
And yet, part of it is like the Edward Norton one. It's just simply, it's not that good. And then once it's like the Spider-Man thing where they knew, like, once they got to Avengers, it's like, we can't keep doing the Hulk. We've done it. We did it twice. So now we got to get moving. And now he's just an Avenger. And now he's just like, yeah, I'm always angry. I'm going to switch it on and off like a light switch. And we're just going to get going with other plot stuff. And so he always feels in the Avengers as like a secondary character.
Yeah.
That they give a little time to in like Age of Ultron. Mm-hmm. But like ultimately, this is still like the best version of the character's journey too.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it encapsulates the tragedy of it. It's a really and what I wanted to talk about was, like, after 15 years of Marvel movies that we've been through right now. In 2003, there was a lot more expectation, I think, certainly from me, going to the Hulk movie for it to check all the boxes, because it was the only movie. And we didn't know when we were going to get another one. So it's like, man, we better get everything we want from a Hulk movie out of this movie. So there wasn't a lot of room, at least for me, in terms of my expectations, and it seems like in terms of the general public expectations, for the Hulk movie to kind of be interesting or be artful or be something that wasn't just checking off all the blockbuster boxes. So I think that's a lot of what was disappointing with about it at the time of its release. But now that we've had, the Marvel movies are the biggest movies in the world. They've dominated for over a decade. There's almost 30 of them. Like, I have all of those boxes checked off in 30 other movies. So I can go back and watch this movie and really appreciate how abstract it is and how insular it is and how it's really this tragedy between these characters, and the movie is much more interested in telling that story than having Hulk punch things.
Yep, and it also does a very good job at that.
It really kind of does.
Yeah, so they do a lot of very efficient things. They have it so that, and maybe this is just stuff from the comic. This is where I'm like, I don't know about it as an adaptation, but looking at it as a story, they start with the base and this trauma and this mystery of the trauma, and then they sandwich it with, well, when we do get the Hulk, where are we going to bring him? Back to that base.
Yeah.
Like, back to where it all... So you have this opportunity to finish all that stuff in a very natural way.
Yeah.
Where he's at the base, he can bring back the memories. They do certain things, like they have Nick Nolte meet with Betty Ross, mm-hmm. as with Jennifer Connelly, who we haven't even mentioned. Fucking Jennifer Connelly.
The cast
she's
of this,
Ethan Hawke. Always great.
Yeah, the cast of this movie is the reason he got this cast is, one, he's Ang Lee, and he's coming. This is pretty soon after Crouching Tiger, so he's like real hot at the time. And the movie is this really dramatic, emotional story. So it's like, this is why it has this cast. Like, this is why these people were interested in making this movie.
Yeah. Sam Elliott is amazing in
He's
this.
real good.
You understand by the end where he's like, his hands are tied and he feels bad about how he has this loyalty to the military and not his daughter. And he's truly sorry.
And he finally apologizes. Yeah. Like, through the whole movie, he's so focused on, nope, I've got to, it's the whole sins of the father thing where it's like, nope, he's the same as his dad. I've got to stop him. I thought this fight was over. He never considers Bruce as a human being, just as an extension of Nick Nolte. And then by the end of the movie, he finally apologized. And it's like, shit.
Yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah.
And so like there's a scene where he sits down with Bruce and he's like, stay away from my daughter. At the exact same time, they have Nick Nolte sick the dogs on Jennifer Connelly to show exactly what we're talking about, that this comes down to two old men with a grudge against each other and that they're infecting their children with it. And they're both irrationally hating the kid of the other one.
Yeah, for no reason.
Because they set it up really well where both of them, their hatred is like so dumb. And they both come off like assholes and idiots. That's really well done in the efficiency of where they put the scenes.
I would say it's blind, not dumb. Because they have pretty good reasons to hate each other, but they are blinded by it. Yeah.
And then they do stuff like they're just really good at naturally adding these moments, like when Nick Nolte, like I think, calls Betty and starts explaining what happened. At the same time, they just happen to be triggering Bruce's dreams, and so they have these layered moments where like they're able to get the exposition out or the ideas across very clearly by having them stacked next to each other.
They're using that
in a way that doesn't feel forced.
And using the comic panel format that this movie is in really helps for the exposition because it keeps juxtaposing images for you. So it's like we said, it's abstract. So it's putting you in the headspace that you need to be in to understand what's happening without necessarily needing a character to just spit it all out at you.
Yeah. And it's just very, like, I would say the structure of the story is very good. And the visuals is very good, too.
Yeah.
Ang Lee, his directing style in this is really fascinating. It's really fun to watch. Hulk is fun to watch. So, like, it does tick off a lot of boxes for me as a film.
I think it's a good movie, honestly. I think it's a pretty interesting piece of art that tells a very simple but very emotional and effective story. It stumbles quite a bit as a Hulk adaptation, certainly as like the first Hulk adaptation in terms of like a big theatrical movie. But again, with the context of the past 20 years, I can go back and appreciate it more for all the things that it does well as just a film.
It's one of the better Marvel films, I think, in the end. Like, it kind of... It won't be remembered that way, certainly.
It really won't be.
But I think it is one of the better made Marvel films. Certainly better than stuff like Eternals, where it's like, this has a fucking structure in it. It's not trying to cram 20 new characters in it or set up 6 films. It's just focusing on a story between these fathers and their kids, and it starts with the people, the characters. That's the core because it's a human story. And that's very important. And also, by the way, is this the first Stan Lee cameo? I don't think he was in the first Spider-Man, was he?
I think he is.
Is he?
I could be wrong remember.
With that.
Shoot, I can't remember if he's in the first one. Or I felt like he was, but maybe he wasn't.
I'm not sure. I feel like I remember him in 3 because it's sweaty as shit. But I don't remember him in the first 2. Because in 3 he's like, some people can make a difference. Enough said.
Some people can. Some people call me Stan Lee, true believer.
Okay.
Excelsior! Okay. And he zooms away on a jetpack.
When was the Ghastly Fantastic Four? Because he's the mailman in that.
Yeah, he's oh shit! I used to know that character. So that's an actual character in the comic.
Oh, okay. Is that after this?
Yeah, it's 2005.
It
2005 was the Tim Story, I think, is the director of that Fantastic Four.
It is. This really feels like maybe possibly the first Stan Lee cameo when the tradition started. But I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I
gotta watch some Spider-Mans again.
Yeah, I could just Google it right now.
Not gonna. We're recording, baby. We're live.
Yeah.
In the past.
Yeah, I really like. Man. Also, Danny Elfman doing the music.
Yeah.
That was like a thing that they were doing.
It's a little similar to a Spider-Man score in certain scenes. But that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you understand, he was like the go-to, they wanted to recapture the success of the original Batman, which like took over the world and was like the biggest movie ever when it came out. So
right.
all these superhero movies are like, let's get Danny Elfman to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know, this is so obvious now, that Stan Lee absolutely had appeared in things before this. We have been not mentioning one very large Marvel series
the Sex
made
Men.
into films. Yeah.
The Sex Men.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where it started. He was the hot dog vendor.
Sure, I believe you.
Yeah. You don't remember that cameo when Senator Kelly like oozes onto the beach?
Yeah, now I do, now that you're mentioning it.
Yeah.
I don't watch those. I don't revisit those movies very often either.
Yeah, they're kind of hard to go back and rewatch for one very specific reason.
They're pretty bad.
I don't mind some of them. All right, well, this isn't about X-Men, but I love that fucking teaser at the end of... X-Men was, to me, that because of the animated series, that was the only Marvel property or superhero property that I knew the details of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, that X2 ending, I was like, fuck! That was
and then X3 happened
hardcore.
anyway.
And then X3 happened. Anywho, we're talking
about Hulk.
I do think this movie needs a bit of redemption, and I just don't know if it's because my bar has been lowered, where all these superhero films I'm exhausted, and I look at this and I go, man, they actually told like a character story. That's different. I haven't seen that in a while. You know what I mean? Where it's like, have we just gotten so far from the point of movies that going back to this seems quaint, that they actually told a story? Or is it, just a genuinely good movie? I think it's a little both.
I think it's a little bit of both, probably.
Yeah.
Like I said, the 15 years of being inundated with Marvel movies has allowed me to appreciate what this movie doesn't do.
Yeah. It doesn't let Josh Lucas live.
No, it shouldn't. There's a really funny moment where he's sneering and the Hulk is doing a very similar sneer, and it's
yeah, it's great. He knows what movie.
Yeah,
he's
Josh
in.
Lucas is just snarling his way through this movie, and it's perfect.
He really
and then he
is.
blows
He's such a
himself up,
wiener
and
in
it's
this.
hilarious.
What an asshole.
Yeah, what an absolute piece of trash.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't have.
Oh, I have one last.
Sure.
Thing. This is such a fart to end on. Why would they suspect Bruce Banner when they just find his wallet at his lab? He works there.
He
works at his lab.
It's flimsy as hell.
Yeah. They're like, look, you left something. It's like, no shit, I work there. Everybody leaves shit at their work. What the fuck?
I think it's in part.
It's because of whose fault.
Right. That's all back to the blind hatred of what Sam Elliott. Like, he just learned from Josh Lucas that his daughter is working with Bruce Banner, even though he's going by Bruce Krensler or whatever. So he shows up there, and the instant he shows up, the lab's been destroyed. He's like, "There's some fucking bullshit going on around here. I found your wallet at the office." That's fucking stone cold Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Left your wallet at the office, you piece of trash.
Oh, Sam Elliott. I loved the young Sam Elliott, by the way.
Great
that guy's
casting.
just doing Sam Elliott.
That was great casting.
Yeah. Final question, actually, and I have a strong opinion on this, although it's close. Which government, this or the Marvel one, was stupider in dealing with the Hulk? Because they're both kind of stupid.
They're both real dumb.
Where they're like, he turns into the monster when you get him angry. Let's get him angry a lot.
Keep antagonizing him.
I would argue this is the smarter one, because they do the dart, right? Mm-hmm. And then they put him like in the ground, and they're like, they're trying to keep him away. Whereas in the Incredible Hulk, they gas him in the middle of a college.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, in this one, they actually seem to like recognize that attacking him directly won't work. And then also understand that he's just this walking bomb. Like when he hulks out in the underground facility and Josh Lucas blows himself up, he starts to smash the lab, and then Sam Elliott's like, turn off all the power so he can see the way out.
Yeah, he's like, we can't find him in here. This is dumb.
And then when he runs into the canyon,
smarter.
when he runs into the canyon, he tells them to shoot the walls of the canyon, not Hulk, to like bury him and slow him down. So they're a little more aware of what Hulk is and what Hulk can do in this movie.
They're tactically smarter.
Yeah.
Neither are smart.
No, neither are smart.
They still do the thing where in this one they're like, put him in water and give him nightmares. And then they're like, oh no, he turned into that Hulk. And it's like, yeah, what did you think was going to happen?
I don't know. We thought he'd have water nightmares.
Yeah. And then they're like, gas him. And it's like, no, you should have tested that first, huh? Like, you should really figure out how to take down the Hulk before you do this
Josh
shit.
Lucas's plan to harvest his DNA was to hobble into his cell, like literally hobble.
Yes,
and then start hitting him with a cattle prod. It's like, he is going to turn into the Hulk and kill you. And he does.
He'll literally kill you, yeah.
Why would you do that, Josh Lucas?
It's not smart across the board.
He wasn't even wearing a helmet when he went in there.
No, he wasn't. Like, he was like, if you turn into the Hulk, some guys are going to come here and shoot you. And you're like, oh, you mean like the other times they shot him and nothing happened?
Yeah.
Like, what is your plan? How many times will a bullet bounce off this guy before you think, hey, maybe we need to figure out a new
We should stop shooting him.
Yeah. But again, that's both Hulks. Yeah. It's very funny. All right. Are we done?
I think so.
All right. Well, hey. First of all, thanks for listening, everybody. Second of all, big thank you to Grumblebee for making this happen. I am very excited about the future of this series.
Yeah, me too.
We're going to cover a bunch of adaptations. Should be a lot of fun.
That'll probably be worse than Hulk and better than Hulk.
Yeah. There's going to be some that I will hurt me to watch.
Yeah, it will cause me violence to watch them. I'll be like Josh Lucas hobbling into fucking Bruce Banner's cell with a cattle prod.
Exactly.
No helmet, no elbow pads.
No, he's trying.
Just my suit, my fucking broken ass nose, and my arm in a sling. Like, I'm gonna come out on top here. It's like, buddy.
Are you, Josh Lucas?
Let's look at all the evidence. What do we know about the Hulk so far?
It's amazing because, again, it's like, okay, we know things bounce off him, and he's like, I'm going to shoot this bomb at him. It's like, and what do you think is going to happen with that bomb? Like, just sit for a second and think about what has happened so far.
Just take a minute.
Yeah. So thank you, Grumblebee. Thank you so much. This was through our Patreon, and if you're interested, you could go to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there for $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac. Those are both exclusive on there. We also have podcasts with the Small Beans folks, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons as well. That's a tier. And then there's tiers like this where you can have us actually make a custom podcast based off your notes and input. So those are all things to check out.
Yeah. We also have a store. Head over to GameFullyUnemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, stickers, mugs, posters, all kinds of stuff. So check that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you goof.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, Josh Lucas, you.
You little Josh Lucases. All you Josh Lucases out there. We know you're watching.
Blowing himself up.
What an asshole.
Oh, man.
I love him.
All right. I think that's it. I think we're done.
Okay. Bye.